Hello, folks. Thank you so much for joining. Rashid here from today. I'm starting a new series, and the name of the series is Building RISC-V in Python. So, this series is going to give you pretty good understanding of the RISC-V architecture that we have been studying for the past 6-7 weeks, especially RV32I, which is our topic. And indirectly, it will also give you a good idea of Python. Keep in mind that this particular video is for public, but the early release of most of the videos in this series will be for the members. But later on, after 4 or 5 weeks, I'm going to release it for public, all the videos. And with that, I'm also telling you that the RISC-V architecture series that we've been doing for the past 6-7 weeks, that should be pretty soon available for everybody. Okay. All right, so let's get started. In this particular video, I'm going to cover these things. So first, a minute and a half, I'm going to spend on what we covered in the RISC-V architecture series for the past 6 weeks. Then I will go over what are the objectives of the simulator that I'm building here, why I want to do that, and then why I want to build that simulator in Python. Then within Python, I will show you the Google Colab that we will use for writing all our Python code. And then in the beginning of the first few videos, I will also give you a tutorial on Python, and I'll tell you what are the topics I picked and what is the motivation behind those. So those are the topics of this videos. The first one, RISC-V RV32I that we picked in the last, and we have been talking about that in the last 6-7 weeks. So let's understand let's understand the bigger picture. What am I trying to do overall? Okay, so goal here is to create a system Verilog based hardware using open source. Then we validate using open source tools, and then we do the physical design and get the GDS ready on an open source PDK using open source tools. Okay, so people probably be thinking, what's the point of doing open source tools? Because in the industry, when people go for a job, they don't use open source tools. They use, for example, Synopsys, Cadence tools, right? But keep in mind that those are vendor tools, and the licenses they have have restrictions. So what here for me, doing a physical design, showing actual technology, showing vendor tools is not possible, right? So the thing that I focus on in my videos is the methodology, the concepts, the theory behind. And I honestly believe that if a student understands the concepts, the theories, why that particular step of the flow, why this step of the flow, what is the objective behind those, if you understand those, then the tools are just tools. Right? I have seen in the field that a lot of people come with the approach of push button approach. Okay, press this button here because somebody created the flow here for me, and these are the commands I need to use. Yes, understanding the tool is important. That fluency with the tool is important, but you can get that pretty quickly once you are on job. Okay, so I believe this overall series with open source tool that I will be giving, this will be very useful for the students across the world who don't have access to those paid tools, but they want to learn the theory behind and they want to appear in interviews. They be successful in those interviews and get the job. And when they get the job, they have all the theory behind, and then they get those paid tools, and then they will be great with those tools. Make sense? So the first part of that overall series, the first playlist I created was, okay, we need to start with the hardware. I could have started with a dedicated fixed hardware like some sort of filters or some other algorithms, but I thought it would be good to start with a CPU. It CPU give you, CPU generally provides you a programmability feature, right? Which is such good that you have a fixed hardware, but that can run so many applications by putting a different sort of code in C language or Java and Python and a higher level language. So it gives a lot of flexibility. And also for you to be able to implement that, you learn a computer architecture concepts, you learn digital design concepts a lot. So that's why I pick a CPU. And then the open source CPU gives us all the specifications already there. So we need to learn those specifications first. And then once we know them, then we will create a hardware for those. So the first part of the playlist I created in 6 7 weeks, I don't know, maybe 25 30 videos I created. Those were focusing on the base, the integer one, the RV32I. And it has 37 instructions that we covered so far. There are 3 more instructions. There is definitely some part of that overall CPU. For example, CPU, when it gets interrupts, how it's going to work with the IOs, how it's going to stop current program and serve the IOs, where the instructions for those IO handlings are stored. Those things I have not covered yet. I will cover those later on. My focus was on those 37 instructions, core instructions that we will look into, the base instruction. And we went over all of them kind of, and every category we look at. Okay, first we look into assembly instructions, and then we look into conversion of assembly into machine language, right? Because ultimately those instructions are stored in the memory in 32 bits. So we had to learn that part. But in all of that, so far, we look at some examples. In the second part, we also look at some manual conversion from decimal to binary, but we didn't look into everything. What I wanted to have some automation where we are not doing manual stuff, but it kind of gives us to the ability to look at everything. I'm kind of getting into the second one, which was the really the objective of this the second part there. But anyway, I spent more than definitely minute on it. So we look at a lot of these examples. And the next stage is definitely that we need to kind of get an in-depth understanding of it. Okay, for every instruction. And we'll run a lot of examples even within an instruction just to understand it thoroughly, because that thorough understanding will be useful for us to create a hardware and system Verilog. So that's why I'm creating this simulator. And this simulator is, for example, here is an initial draft that I created a few weeks ago, but this only contains, for example, this is a web-based application in Python, and I will teach you this, how to create a GUI like this on a web that you can create for not only for simulator but also create for a lot of other things in your chip design. And not many people know that, so learning that capability will definitely give you a good tool to impress others and also make your life easier. Okay, for example, in this one we can write different instructions here, right? A program here. And then the pictures below, right now you see some bunch of those base registers there. So okay, once we run these instructions, what will be the content of this register or that register? So we will be able to see that picture. The another thing will be, we will also put a picture of the memory, how memory looks like, what are the contents of the memory, right? So just building that picture will help us understand each instruction in much better way. Okay, and assembler is part of that simulator, because assembler will be we will be converting these into binary numbers, and those binary numbers will be stored in the register, in the memory, and all that. Okay, so that is really the objective, the first part. a thorough understanding. The second part is that later on when we create a system Verilog code, right, we need to check whether through system Verilog code, when we give different instruction, they are calculated properly or not. Okay. So one way of doing this, which the kind of testing is that on one side we have a system Verilog code, on the other side we have our simulator results, and then we give the same inputs to both, and the outputs from both we compare them. So that automated testing will help us a lot during the validation phase, thorough validation. We will do initial component level testing, but later on we will use that thorough testing or maybe add some UVM methods in that too. And again, the idea is to that you guys learn all the basics of chip design, and later on when you go inside in a RTL design or RTL validation or physical design, that's where in a job then you will learn more advanced level things. But knowing the basics of things will help you a lot in your career, and that's really the goal of my YouTube channel. Okay, then next question is why Python? Why not some other language? Okay, the Python is I see is spreading a lot these days. My generation use Perl language a lot. Okay, there are overall, if you are in chip design, there will be three languages that will be used mostly. Okay, one is your shell, your bash or your C shell. Okay, you know that. Okay, that is important because you are working in a shell in a Unix environment, right? Then the second language is the language of the tools, mostly Tickle. Okay, and the third one is where shell and Tickle, those are not very easy to use. Kind of people who have worked with those will see those. And Perl language gave us a very powerful language where we can parse reports, where we can analyze reports or convert the format on some kind of default into a pretty standardized or convert them into CSV. A lot of that kind of automation we did in Perl. But the Python offers very rich library sets, packages. A lot of things are already created and industry is using it a lot. And for example, you see the metrics operations, the AI, a lot of AI training, inference, that of machine learning stuff is already done in Python. And so I have seen recently, even when I started coding myself in Python for a lot of stuff that I used to have a Perl language. So that's why I think Python is a great way to invest some time on it. And if you are coming from a different language and don't know Python, then I think this tutorial, especially in the beginning that I gave, those will be very useful for you. Good. All right. So what kind of environment we are going to use? So one option is that we install Python. You can download. And then all the packages that we use in a Unix. So you can do that, by the way, in Unix or Windows. And you have to do pip install all the individual packages that you use. And then you use an editor of your choice, for example, Microsoft Visual Studio or any other thing, right? That is one option, and that is not a difficult option. But the option what I'm going to use for this series is Google Colab. The cool thing about it is online. You just need a Gmail account, and then you log in on a Google search field. You search for Google Colab, you click on it, you get a window like this, and that's where you say new work notebook, and you will create a new notebook, something like this. You can change the name there afterwards, but all this data sits on your Google Drive. You can share, you can access from anywhere. So that's the beauty. You don't need to install anything. You don't need to install any particular package or library with pip install or anything. Everything is already there. So you really focus on writing actual code. The second thing is provide you different cells. So once you do new notebooks, you will get something like this, a window. This is a snapshot of the iPad window, but might be a little different on a desktop or a laptop. But you get two type of cells. Okay, your code cell, where you can put one line or more line of code, And you get a text cell where you can use for help, for comments, for general purpose and all that. And then you can run individual cells. For example, you click on this play button and it will just execute that part. And you can see I define a variable and then I printed it, and when I execute, there's a play button here that executed and it printed output here. So you can run, execute, and test certain parts of your Python script. And I think that's pretty cool as opposed to running everything and just running complete script. Okay, so hopefully I am able to show you why building a simulator is a good idea, and then why Python is a good idea, and then why Google Colab is a good idea. Okay, in the first few videos after this, I'm going to give you an overview of Python. Listen, the way I learn a language, and I think the way most people learn is by actually doing it, by actually practicing it. So I can talk on and on different constructs or syntax on Python, but that's not the way you will learn. You will forget this, right? So what I'm going to do is I will give you some. I thought about what are the key things. So if I have a Perl script, what are the key components inside? So those components I want to learn in Python. Their constructs. Okay, learning some of the basic constructs and syntax is important for you. Nowadays, what happens is we rely a lot on AI to generate those codes. And I think that's a great idea. I mean, you can use Google Gemini, you can use OpenAI ChatGPT, you can use Microsoft Copilot. I personally use for coding Google Gemini, but you can use any of those and they will write much better code than what you can write. Okay. Or you can give it Perl code, it will create a Python equivalent of that. So if AI can generate a very good code, what's the point for you to know all that? I think there is a value for you to know some of the basic constructs. So sometimes you can intervene yourself and make some changes as opposed to rely completely on prompting for the AI to generate that code. I can give you examples where I have struggled with AI. AI gets tired. Sometimes AI gets some silly mistakes. And there's a small thing that you can do yourself, but for you to kind of prompt AI into that way, in that direction, sometimes get tricky. So I think it's important that you know some basic syntax, and that's what I'm going to cover in the next few videos. But once you know that, you don't have to write that code yourself. I think you can rely on the AI for all that. And that's what I'm going to use. Wherever I can save my time, wherever I can be more productive, I'm going to, I find that way. And there's no value for me to spend time on actual coding. I mean, I can put my value, a human value, to some other more intelligent place where I can make a bigger impact, right? And that's how you engineers need to think like that. With the AI, it's giving you so many tools. It's changing the way how we design things. Gradually, it's gonna come in every field of chip design. Right now there's some field there's more in RTL coding, and that's what we'll use. All the system Verilog coding that we create, all the validation we create, I'm going to use AI as much as I can. And that this is where this open source tools or open source coding and structure is going to help me a lot. So I'm going to use those as much as I can to make my designing phase much quicker, and I spend time where AI cannot give me much help. All right, I think that's all for this first video. Hopefully you will join me in this series, and we will work on Python coding together and learn the RISC-V architecture even more. Okay, all right, that's it for now. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you pretty soon in another video.